In 2024, something strange started happening. Not in stock markets, not in crypto, not even in oil. Governments around the world started buying gold, like it was the last life raft on a sinking ship. China bought more. Russia bought more. India bought more. Poland, Turkey, Singapore, Kazakhstan, even countries that publicly mocked gold as an old relic, suddenly couldn't get enough of it. And here's the uncomfortable part. They're not buying gold because they think the world is stable. They're buying it because they think something is breaking, quietly, slowly, underneath the global financial system itself. Because when central banks panic buy the same asset at the same time, you should probably ask why. For decades, gold was treated like that retired athlete everyone respects but nobody actually calls anymore. It just sat there, shiny, heavy, boring. The modern financial world moved on to dollars, bonds, digital banking, derivatives, algorithms, high-frequency trading, and trillion-dollar tech companies selling cloud subscriptions. Gold looked ancient, useless even. After all, gold doesn't pay interest. It doesn't produce cash flow. You can't email it. You can't print more of it during a crisis. Which, ironically, is exactly why governments suddenly want it again. Because the modern financial system runs on trust. Trust that currencies will hold value. Trust that governments will repay debt. Trust that sanctions won't freeze your assets. Trust that inflation will stay under control. Trust that the world's reserve currency will remain neutral. And recently, that trust has started cracking. The first real shock came after the Russia-Ukraine war, when the United States and its allies froze hundreds of billions of dollars of Russian foreign reserves. Now politically, morally, strategically, people can debate that forever. But financially, every government on Earth saw the same message flash in giant red letters. Your reserves are only yours, until they aren't. That changed everything. Because countries suddenly realized that US Treasury bonds, the thing central banks have trusted for decades, come with geopolitical strings attached. And gold? Gold doesn't care about sanctions. Gold doesn't need SWIFT. Gold doesn't need permission. Gold can't be frozen by another government sitting 8,000 kilometers away. If you physically own it, it's yours. Simple. And in finance, simple becomes very attractive when the world gets chaotic. But this story goes deeper than geopolitics. Because underneath all this sits a much bigger problem. Debt. A ridiculous amount of debt. The United States alone now carries debt so massive that the interest payments themselves are becoming absurd. Not the debt, just the interest. Imagine having a credit card bill so large that paying the minimum amount starts crushing your monthly salary. That's basically where many governments are heading. And here's where things get awkward. Historically, governments have only had a few ways to escape giant debt piles. Option 1. Raise taxes aggressively. Politicians hate this because voters exist. Option 2. Cut spending dramatically. Also unpopular because voters still exist. Option 3. Inflate the debt away. And suddenly everything starts making sense, because inflation is politically sneaky. Instead of directly taking money from people, you slowly reduce what their money can buy. A silent haircut. And gold has spent thousands of years acting like a giant alarm bell against currency debasement. When people trust paper money less, gold usually rises. Not because gold changes, because currencies do. This is why central banks buying gold matters so much. These are not random retail investors on TikTok drawing lines on charts while drinking protein shakes. These are the institutions that literally issue money. And even they seem nervous about the future purchasing power of currencies. That should probably concern people. Now here's the part most headlines miss. Governments are not just buying gold because they fear inflation. They're buying it because they fear fragmentation. The global economy used to orbit around one dominant center, the US dollar. Oil traded in dollars, trade settled in dollars, debt issued in dollars, reserves stored in dollars. The system was incredibly efficient, but efficiency and resilience are not the same thing. A Formula One car is efficient too, until it hits a wall. Today, more countries are trying to reduce dependence on the dollar system. Not eliminate it, that's much harder, but reduce dependence. China has been expanding yuan-based trade deals. BRICS countries openly discuss alternative payment systems. Countries are repatriating gold reserves back home instead of storing them abroad. Even Germany once requested large portions of its gold be returned from foreign vaults. That's not a coincidence. That's trust becoming more local. And when trust shrinks, countries start grabbing hard assets. Now let's pause for 1 second, because this is where things become deeply ironic. The same governments that spent decades convincing citizens that gold was outdated are now among the largest buyers of gold on Earth. It's a little like watching a vegan secretly order steak at 2 a.m. quietly, without eye contact. And the numbers are enormous. Central banks have been buying gold at the fastest pace seen in decades. Not small symbolic purchases, massive accumulation. Why? Because gold solves a problem modern finance still cannot fully solve. Counterparty risk. Most financial assets depend on someone else keeping a promise. Bonds depend on governments paying. Bank deposits depend on banks surviving. Currencies depend on central bank credibility. Gold just exists. No earnings report, no CEO scandal, no emergency rate meeting, just a metal sitting there like, I survived the Roman Empire, I'll probably survive this too. And honestly, that durability matters more during uncertainty than during prosperity. But before everyone rushes to declare the end of the dollar, slow down. The dollar is still dominant, by far. Most global trade still runs through it. Most reserves are still dollar-based. US financial markets remain the deepest and most liquid on Earth. Replacing the dollar completely would be like replacing the entire operating system of the global economy while the machine is still running. Extremely difficult. And yet, the gold buying suggests countries are preparing for a world where the system becomes more divided, more political, more fragmented. Not one global financial empire, but competing blocks. That's the real story here. Gold isn't replacing the dollar tomorrow. Gold is becoming insurance against a world where trust is no longer guaranteed. And insurance only becomes popular when people start seeing risks everywhere. Which brings us to the uncomfortable math. If central banks continue buying gold aggressively, while governments continue printing debt aggressively, while geopolitical tensions continue rising aggressively, then eventually markets start asking dangerous questions. What exactly gives modern money its value? And the answer is awkwardly simple: confidence. That's it. Modern currencies are backed by belief. Belief that governments remain stable. Belief inflation remains manageable. Belief the rules remain predictable. But history has a habit of humbling systems that assume trust lasts forever. Empires change. Reserve currencies rotate. Financial orders evolve. The British pound once ruled global trade too, until it didn't. And maybe that's why governments are quietly stacking gold bars again. Not because they know exactly what happens next, but because they don't. And uncertainty is where gold has always thrived. The strange part is this: ordinary people still debate whether gold is relevant. Meanwhile, central banks, the people closest to the plumbing of the global financial system, are buying it faster than they have in decades. That disconnect should probably make everyone pause for a moment. Because governments rarely panic buy insurance when they think the future looks calm. They do it when they see storms forming before everyone else does. And right now, they seem to be buying a lot of umbrellas. If you enjoyed this video, like, share, and subscribe for more interesting videos. And comment below, do you think governments are preparing for inflation or preparing for something much bigger?